So we're going to get to a third segment, which also doesn't look well for Miss or Mayor Lightfoot. So let's headline: Lightfoot's office was blindsided by CPD. Blindsided by CPD's use of controversial facial recognition software, then raised serious concerns. This came out in the dump of hacked emails from Jones Day. And basically, this is a 2019 emails. Actually 2020 emails. But basically what it shows is that January 1st, 2020, the CPD started using Clearview AI, which is a company that scrapes multiple social media and other sites and collects images and basically has a facial recognition database unmatched by anyone, probably anyone other than the government. And they use facial recognition. Now, they're very controversial. There's all kinds of problems with it. Really high false positives on blacks, specifically blacks or anyone of color, and specifically non-males. It's horrifically bad at it. But the CPD said, we don't care. We'll give you a $50,000 contract, which they started the process in September of 2019, and that actually went live in January of 2020. And then I think, if I get the timing right, it got exposed in like May or June of 2020 that the CPD actually had the contract, and there was back and forth between the mayor's office and the CPD had to admit they did it. So here's a quote from Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot. CPD, this is after her office found out that they do in fact use Clearview AI, but I'll get to how really false her statement is. True lie. CPD does not use facial recognition software. Lightfoot wrote in an email to Lee and other staffers the following day. What? The day after the Sun-Times exposed the fact that they had a contract with Clearview AI and they're using facial recognition. Lightfoot's like, they don't do it. So either she was lying or she was ignorant. Now, most of the time I would think they don't know. But don't you think she would have called first or inquired, called the superintendent and found out? If she did find out and knew and then wrote that, then it's a lie, because that's what went public. So you say, well, maybe she didn't know. They had Clearview AI just for a few years. And let me just back up and say, they bought that software. It's only a $50,000, I think it was a trial. It was only a $50,000 contract. When you're talking a $1.7 billion budget, not much in the CPD, but how did they pay for it? Not with Chicago funds, ladies and gentlemen. Federal anti-terrorism funds were used to pay for that contract. Now, what makes Lightfoot's statement worse, the CPD does not use facial recognition software. Well, two things could have created that statement. Either she knew they were and she's lying, or she was lied to by the superintendent, or, and by that time, June, July of 2020, her boy David Brown was in, her pick was in. He lied to her. Or third, she just had no clue, and she rattled that off as a statement to go out to the media with no clue whether or not she was right, just assumed because she's mayor, she knows everything that's going on and doesn't need to check anything. Well, why do I say that? Well, it turns out the CPD has had a contract with a company called DataWorks since 2013. What does DataWorks do, you ask? Well, they do facial recognition. So that statement is empirically, completely, and utterly false. Someone lied to her, she was lying, or she had no clue. I'm not sure which version of that is best. Okay, let's get to a quote from Daniel Lurie, her chief of policy. This is in an email The face comparison policy states that the CPD will adopt and follow procedures and practices by which it can ensure and evaluate the compliance of users with the face comparison system requirements. Does anyone know what the hell that means? This is the chief of policy was quoting something the CPD sent. Okay. Larry wrote to Lee, I think it's Susan Lee, who's then deputy mayor for public safety. But those procedures and practices are not defined and, in quote, brackets actually wasn't in the statement, are at the core of any meaningful accountability system. Of course, the CPD has no meaningful accountability, and they certainly don't want one, and they don't want one about spying, and they don't want one about new technologies. But none of this is important really in the end, because as you heard from as the mayor said in that statement in 2020, the CPD doesn't use facial recognition software. They don't do that. Just because they have contracts with two different companies to do that, why would I be telling the truth? So it's pretty sad. Now, the last part of this that I think is interesting is that there's like this discussion about who stopped the contract. The CPD spun it as if they pulled the contract. They thought it was a trial, they tested it, it didn't work as well, they got rid of it. It wasn't because, holy shit, this either is bad PR, or by the way, which is the big problem with Clearview, it violates the biometrics laws in Illinois. It broke them. They're being sued currently by the ACLU and I think others. At least it seems rather significant violation of the biometrics laws, and it's so bad that they dropped Illinois, which is why it wasn't the CPD that pulled the plug. It was Clearview. Clearview not only pulled the plug, they refunded them their money, their prorated money. CPD didn't pull the plug, Clearview did. Clearview left the state because of the biometrics law, and they knew they were basically going to lose it. So